Okay, let's look at question 24 from the benchmark. The tables of ordered pairs represent some points on the graphs of lines Q and V. So we have a table for line Q and we have a table for line V. And it asks which system of equations is represented by lines Q and lines V. So what they want us to do is notice each answer choice has two equations and we have two tables. So what we have to do is we have to see is, okay, do one of these lines match up to Q, and does the other line match up to the table for line V? And that's what we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange all of these equations and I'm going to make them into y equals mx plus b. And if I do that, I can now go to my calculator and then I can type these in y equals and I can match them up to my table. So the first one I'm going to do is I've got to move the 21x to the other side. So I'm going to end up with negative y is equal to 9 minus 21x because I have to subtract 21x from both sides. And then I don't want a negative 1y, I want a positive 1y. So I'm going to divide by negative 1 all the way through. And so I'm going to get y equals negative 9 because 9 divided by negative 1 is negative 9. And so now I'm going to go ahead and do my next. So I've got negative 21 divided by negative 1, and that's going to need a positive 21x. And then I'm going to do the same thing for here. So I'm going to move that 5x to the other side, and I'm going to have to subtract 5x from both sides. So I'm going to get 6y is equal to 40 minus 5x. And then I don't want 6y, so I'm going to divide by 6 all the way across. So that's going to get me 1y, or just y. And so now I'm going to type in 40 divided by 6, and that is equal to 20/3. And then I'm going to have negative 5 divided by 6, and that is equal to negative 5/6x, so minus 5/6x. And now I'm going to go to my table. So I'm going to go to y equals, I'm going to type in the first equation, negative 9 plus 21x, and I'm going to go to my table, and my first x value is negative 9. So I'm going to see negative 9, and it says my y value is supposed to be 0, but clearly that is not 0. So now I'm going to check this table, because what if this equation is really line V? So now I'm going to go to negative 4, and the y value is supposed to be 10. Well, you can clearly see that the y value here is not 10. So this equation does not match either table, so that means F can't be the right answer. I'm not even going to bother putting that one in my calculator. Okay. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to now rearrange this equation, which means I've got to move the 3x by subtracting from both sides. So I'm going to get negative y is equal to negative 27 minus 3x. And then I don't want a negative 1y, I want a positive 1y, so I'm going to divide by negative 1 all the way across, and I'm going to get y equals. And then that's going to make a positive 27, because negative divided by negative is positive, so 27. And then the same here, negative divided by negative is positive, and I know 3 divided by 1 is a positive 3. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and rearrange this equation, and again, I want to move x to the other side, so I'm going to subtract x from both sides, so I'm going to get 2y equals 16 minus x. And then I'm going to divide by 2 because, again, I want a positive 1y. So I'm going to end up with y equals 16 divided by 2 is 8. And then just to check my math, remember that is a negative 1. It can't be a 0 because then the x wouldn't be there. So negative 1 divided by 2 is going to be negative 1/2. So it's going to be minus 1/2 x. And now I have my 2y equals equation. So I'm going to clear my calculator real quick, and I'm going to go to y equals. And I'm going to type in the first one, 27 plus 3x, and I'm going to go to my table. Now remember, I'm going to check to see if this one, I don't know if this equation matches line Q or line V's table, so I'm going to check line Q first. So I'm going to go up to negative 9, and it is 0. Okay, so it matches that first x, y ordered pair. Let me see if it matches the second one. So now I'm going to go to negative 3, and you can see that negative 3 does indeed give me an output value of 18. So it matches that one, and I'm going to check the third one because I want to make sure every value in the table is verified. So when my x value is 2, do I get a y value of 33? And you can see that it does match with line Q. So I'm going to put a check there. and a check by line Q. Okay, so now I'm going to type in my other equation. So I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm going to type in 8 minus 1/2. Uh-oh, I need to clear that out. 8 minus 1/2 x. And now I'm going to go to the table because now, since the other equation matched line Q, I want to see, does this equation match the table for line V? Okay, so now I'm going to go to -4. When x is -4, I should get a y value of 10, and I certainly do. So now I'm going to check the next one. When x has a value of 0, is my y value 8? Yes, it is. And when my x value is 10, is my y value 3? And it certainly does match. So now I know that this equation matches up with line V. So that means the correct answer is G. The system of equations that is represented in the table is the system that is in G. Okay, for the next question on your benchmark, you have question number 30. It says, what is the solution set for -4 times the value of x plus 10 is greater than or equal to 5 times the value of x plus 55? Okay, so when you see a question like this, when they're asking for a solution set, that means there is more than one answer. Okay? Well, answer to what? Because that's what the hardest part in math is trying to figure out, is what is the answer they're actually looking for. And your clues lie in this inequality, and it also lies in your answer choices. If you looked at this inequality, there are numbers here, -4, 10, 5, 55, and the x also represents a number. It's the only number that we have no idea what its value is, so that is the answer that we are trying to find. Here's another clue. If you look at your answer choices, what letter are they all solved for? They are all solved for x, and they are telling you for f that your answers, plural, more than one, answer for x could be any number that starts at 5 and is bigger. In G, it could be any number that starts at 45 and gets bigger because greater than or equal to. H, x is less than or equal to -5, which means any number that starts at -5 and goes left of -5 on the number line, getting smaller, could be an answer to this inequality. J is saying x is less than or equal to -45. So any number that starts at -45 and is left of -45 getting smaller could be answers that makes this inequality true. So we want to figure this out. So we're going to use our solving equation skills to do this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 5x to be on the same side as the 4x. So I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. I want to get all my variables on the same side of my inequality, just like I would if that was an equal sign. So I'm going to get my calculator, and I'm going to say, okay, I started with -4, I'm combining like terms, and then I'm taking away 5, so now I have -9x, and I'm going to bring down my plus 10, I'm going to bring down my greater than or equal to, and I'm going to bring down my 55, okay? Because that 5x has now turned into a 0 because I subtracted it. Alright, so I've got all my variables combined into one single term, and now I need to do the same thing with my constant. So I've got to decide, do I need to subtract 10 or do I need to subtract 55? Well, I don't want the 10 to stay here with the -9x because these are not like terms. So I have to subtract 10 from both sides so that I can move all of my constants to one side of the inequality. So now that is going to turn into a 0, and I'm going to be left with -9x is greater than or equal to, and then I want to figure out, well, if I started with 55 and I take away 10, I now have 45 on this side. Okay, and so the final step, now that I have all my like terms separated by my inequality sign, so all my variables are on the left, all my constants are here, now I've got to separate off this -9, and I'm going to divide both sides by -9, because again, I want to solve it for 1x, and the only way I can do that is to divide -9 by itself. Alright, so that is going to give me a 1x. Well, I don't have to write the 1, I can just write x. And I'm going to wait to deal with my inequality, and now I'm going to do 45. Actually, I'm going to type this in as a fraction, if I push the right buttons here. 45 divided by -9 is -5. Okay, so remember when we solved for y with inequalities and we divided by a negative, we had to flip-flop our inequality symbols. So now I need to check, did I divide by a negative number? And the answer is yes, I divided by a negative 9. So my inequality symbol needs to flip-flop. And now it's going to be x is less than or equal to negative 5. And that matches up with H. Okay, question 32. It says, what is the slope? What are the equation and slope of the line shown on the grid? Okay, so they want a slope and they want an equation of the function in the graph. So I'm going to highlight this. And hopefully you recognize this as a Vux line. It is a vertical line, which means these three letters are going to help me out. Remember, V stands for vertical. It tells you how the graph should look. And vertical lines go up and down. This line goes up and down. And then the U is to help you remember the slope of vertical lines. The slope of every vertical line is undefined. And then the third letter is supposed to help us out to remember the equation. Remember, vertical lines are x equals equations. That's why we picked those three letters. So I'm going to go ahead and start looking through my answers. So y equals. Well, y equals aren't the equation for vertical lines, so that's out. X equals, we're going to keep it. Y equals, again, vertical lines are not written as y equals equations. It's got to be x equals. And they're both x equals 6, and the reason why they pick 6 is because no matter where you're at on this vertical line, all the x values are 6. If I'm here, guess what my x value is? 6. If I'm at this order pair, guess what my x value is? 6. If I'm here, guess what my x value is? 6. If I'm here, guess what my x value is? 6. So see, it doesn't matter what ordered pair you're on that vertical line, your x values are always 6. That's why x equals 6 is the equation. So now I just got to decide, is the slope 0 or is the slope undefined? And hopefully you recognize U and D for an up and down line, so the correct answer is J. If you picked G, you got your slopes with horizontal lines mixed up. All right, let's look at 34. What is the solution to 34 times the value of x plus 95 is equal to 3 times the sum of 14 times the value of x and 9. Record your answer and fill in the bubbles on your answer document. Okay, so this is a question where you have to provide the answer. It's not multiple choice. So what do they mean when they say solution? They mean find the answer. But what is the answer to? And the only hint you have is this equation here. Well, what is the only thing that you do not know in this equation? The value of x. So your solution is find the value of x. That is what they are telling you to do. Find the value of x. Well, the only way that you can find the value of x is by solving this equation. So it's kind of like the solving inequality problem that we did just a second ago. So what we're going to do is, first thing I got to do is I got to distribute. I got to multiply. Okay, so we are going to multiply both of these numbers by 3. So I'm going to have 34x plus 95 is equal to, so I'm going to say 3 times 14. That is 42x. Because if I had 3 14x's, I would have 14x plus 14x plus 14x, which is 42x. And then I have 3 9s, 9 plus 9 plus 9, or you can think of it as 3 times 9, which is 27. Okay, so just like with solving an inequality for one variable, the only variable we have is x, we got to get all our like terms on the same side of the equal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this 42x. I'm going to subtract 42x from both sides, because when I subtract 42x, what I've done is now this 42 has turned into 0, because now it's over here with the 34 like I want it to be. And so I'm going to say 34 minus 42, and that's going to be negative 8x. I'm going to bring down the plus 95, and I'm going to bring down the 27. And now I want to get my like terms together. Well, 8x, negative 8x and 95 are not like terms, so what I have to do is move that 95. And how am I going to move it? I either have to add it or subtract it. So I'm going to subtract 95 from both sides. Because when I subtract 95, now this 95 goes to 0 because now it's moved over here with the 27. So I'm going to bring down my negative 8x equals, and now I'm going to see what do I have. I started with 27, and then that is telling me I'm taking away 95. So I'm going to end up with negative 68. And now I want to figure out what is the value of 1x. So I want to make this a positive one. So now I have to divide negative 8 by itself, which means I'm dividing negative 8 here. And so now I've gotten 1x equals, so I've got x equals, and now I want to see what 68 over 8 is. So alpha y equals enter. I'm going to do negative 68 divided by 8, and that is equal to negative 17 halves. Negative 17 divided by 2. Okay, so if you want to fill this in on your answer document, you cannot put a fraction in there. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to actually do this division and turn this into decimal. So there's several ways you could do it. You could type in the fraction, and then you could press math to enter, or you could do the division. You could do top number divided by bottom. This is read as negative 17 divided by 2, so that's what I could type in my calculator, negative 17 divided by 2, and you see you get the same decimal answer. So these two answers are the same. They are just written in different formats. One's a fraction, one's a decimal, and the decimal answer is what you would need to bubble in on your answer document.